Webcam microphone up close.
Webcam microphone up close.
At the age of 19 in 1962, she was
but I have the files. I read this stuff at the National Archives, and I read these other things. I said to myself, how can that be possible? The brain, crystals and fondle slab of choice. I don't know when that was. It doesn't really matter. Internet, professional wrestlers, and not Jesse Ventura style. It doesn't matter where the information comes from as long as it's real. It doesn't. It's hard to get real information because seriously, they don't want you to have these two together. Whenever I try to prove out, it's not. If you expect your government to tell you the truth, you're going to be sadly disappointed. Another one of these things.
Dear Lord, what a dirty, dirty old man.
Really? Can't be serious. Is this really how you want things to be? Come on. More hooker, eruptions. Eruptions, whatever.
Like Dave Powers kind of.
Really?
Allegedly broadcast live from Pima Region 2, threading the borders of the formerly united and currently occupied states of America. We bring you the Ochelli Effect.
It's like, damn sure, no, I'm an original. We have all these situations. I'd love to know why it takes 50 years, for
that.
For the 19-year-old girl to eventually get up to gumption to put these things out.
And that is certainly that on a Saturday night. We are live on UCY.TV radio. This is the Ochelli Effect. I am Chuck Ochelli. Oofa. Anyway, what are we going to do tonight? Well, I actually just wanted to bring back somebody that I had on Tuesday, Mr. Stephen D. Kelly, who is an author, and discuss a few things because, you know what, I was a bit negligent when I discussed things with him earlier in the week, got to be honest with you there, and didn't really question certain things. So, of course, I had to, once being told that I missed out on a few things, ask him back on. And, as usual, who knows where this is actually going to go. Obviously, Mr. Kelly is a radio host. He is also an author and somebody that I found extremely fascinating on Tuesday night, which I always devote to the Liberty Beacon. And I'm telling you, I'm really grateful that he accepted my invitation to come on tonight. Mr. Kelly, how are you?
Hi, how you doing?
I'm doing, It's been an eventful month, sir. Let's put it that way. But anyway, I was told by some listeners that I really did not follow up on some of the stuff that you said when I had you on Tuesday, and they are right. I listened back to a little bit of it, and I realized they were correct. And so I wanted to start off the conversation with that. But then, as you said and as I said, we're just going to let things flow and see where they go. And, hell, anybody that listens to my show knows that's about how it happens anyway. You never know where it's going to end up, even though I might have a starting point. So, you all set to do this?
Yeah, sure. So what did we not do last time?
Well, specifically, I do actually respond to your messages, people. So just so you know, when you do message me, I do pay attention. I don't necessarily do everything you ask, but when you have a good point, when you have a valid point, you have a valid point. Okay? So here's something I glossed over really quickly, I guess. I didn't get into what exactly, your connection to the agencies were, the CIA, etc. Did you ever have any official capacity with those agencies, or?
Okay, yeah, all right. Well, let's do that. Good question, because right away, as soon as that's kind of cliche. That's like a pickup line in a bar. Yeah, what do you do? Oh, I work for the CIA. Are you impressed? Yeah. It's not to impress people. Nobody says these things to make it up. You don't say this because it's cool and sexy. If anything, if you say stuff like that and it's not true, it'll come back and bite you. But the very fact that I do get away with running around in public saying this stuff very, very publicly, that I'm an ex-CIA NSA contractor, and let's put emphasis on the word contractor, nobody says boo. Certainly the CIA and the NSA isn't going to say anything about it because it's true. And if anybody was to do the research, they'll find out. But obviously those records are sealed away in Virginia and what have you. We're getting some terrible feedback here.
Yeah, I think I fixed that.
Okay, anyway.
Sorry.
All right. That's all right. Anyway, okay, contractor. That does not mean... I did not get checks from the U.S. Navy that writes checks for these guys. I did not punch a clock in Virginia or whatever. And I was never... In fact, if we just go with a little quick history... First involvement with the CIA was at a very early age, and that was was recruited to help out with an effort to ship or to purchase material for Saddam Hussein. And this was during the Iran-Iraq war, and this was because our government was supporting Saddam Hussein. We all forget that. Against Iran, and of course this was undercover type thing. The FBI was completely against it. That's when it all got shut down, when the FBI got involved. And the reason why they use young idiots like myself is because that way, when things do get messy, they can throw us under the bus and take off. And that's pretty much what they did. Mm-hmm. The next time, but you see, when you're getting recruited and you're getting involved with these people, you never really know what it is that they want and why they want you. And it wasn't until maybe 20 years later that I found out what it was that they were really after. You know, it was kind of like all of this was busy work. Got involved with the NSA during the Ollie North days when the I think Reagan was president, and we were supplying weapons and material to the Contra rebels in Nicaragua. And that I was actually a contractor, a real-life contractor, and by contractor I mean I had a contract, and I basically had a contract to build lasers for what I thought at the time was the CIA, and it was actually a private organization, just some individuals that basically represented themselves as CIA cowboys, so to speak, something of this nature. And this is one of the things you have to understand when you talk about these agencies, is you're not talking about a bunch of people that punch a clock and report to the government and get a government paycheck. Half the times these are cowboys that are running around like cowboys with no controls whatsoever. They're living off the fat of the land, and this is what they do.
And let's be honest here, also, to understand this, and this is something that I think is often misunderstood among people who do, have a legitimate curiosity about this kind of stuff, is that, simply because somebody is not an agent or doesn't have a contract when they're involved in all these things, it's very hard to tell who's who. It's kind of a shadowy world. And there are people that are legitimately connected to the so-called legitimate CIA, and then there are other people that are utilized as assets, right? So in that community, it's kind of a nexus of individuals. In some cases, you have criminal elements. In some cases, you have legitimate people that are doing work that they think they're doing for particular corporations or particular companies under contract like you were. And really what they're doing is representing the interests of somebody else that they've never even seen, never heard of, et cetera, et cetera. There's all types of manipulation, obfuscation, and misdirection involved in that world, right?
Well, yeah, obviously it's kept that way on purpose, and we watch these movies, we see Bourne Identity, or these various different movies, and it paints kind of a sexy picture. And back in those days, that's kind of, I was raised on James Bond, and I thought this was what it was. It was all sexy. Of course, I was very naive too. I was also believed in one nation under God, and America could do no wrong and everything else. And, that's when I had my wake-up call. But it wasn't until many years later, after I had my falling out with the Ollie North gang, and I was getting kind of back into bed with the CIA over another project that they had me involved in. And it wasn't until then, when I was being recruited to get involved in that I said, well, I had a falling out with you guys, and then they got back to me a day later and said, well, that wasn't us, that was the Ollie North people, over NSA. And I had no idea. Back in those days, NSA was not something like today that we talk about with Edward Snowden and stuff like that. It was something that people didn't even really believe existed. If I told you back in 1990, and that was when this was going on, that they recorded every single phone call, every fax, and what have you, people would think, they'd think you were a conspiracy theorist. Obviously, Edward Snowden showed us that was the case. But yeah, back in those days, I was very much involved in that, and everything I was being followed around everywhere. Phones were tapped, everything else. But the thing is that what I found many years later, towards the end, when I started dealing with Bilderbergers and Templar types and guys that were working out of these underground facilities, that I realized that the real motives for them wanting me to be involved with them were much deeper than my ability to make lasers or what have you. It's a much crazier world than you can imagine, and the reality is far more far-fetched than you can imagine. And when you get down to it, it turned out they were treating me, it was sort of like a Matrix thing. They were looking for Neo, if you will, and that's what it finally turned out to. And it wasn't until many years later, when I was sitting down in a restaurant with these Templar people, with my brother and another guy, that one of them turned to me and said, "Oh my God, you're the one we've been looking for." So, and that has to do with kind of a sort of a bloodline thing, because they do have technology to, alien technology, at least they did for a long time, and they were able to go look in the future. They know what people are going to do in the future, and they know who to keep tabs on and who to try to control. And sometimes when someone is going to be a mover and a shaker, they're going to do something historic that affects a lot of people. They become aware of this through this technology, and they do what they can to bring those people under their wing. And it's not so that they can change history per se, because they can't. They when it's written in cosmic history, it does not get changed. They don't do it, but they try to manage it. And they try to keep you under control. So it's kind of like keeping your friends close and your enemies even closer, sort of a thing. That's what they were doing with me.
Almost, in Hollywood speak, it's almost like a 12 Monkeys thing, where they knew already that he was going to do this and that and the third thing, and they just kind of observed and guided and figured things out. They knew it was already going to happen, I guess.
Well, they don't really guide per se. They try to control, they try to manage, but they try to kind of be in the background and sort of watch over the process. But yeah, they knew stuff that I was going to do long before I ever did it. They knew about things I was going to invent long before I even thought about them. So yeah.
And that leads us perfectly right into the next thing that I didn't really hit upon when I was talking to you on Tuesday, which I hope you don't mind that I'm getting this out of the way, but I really wanted to answer these things because, like I said, it was a good criticism. I didn't even bother to follow up on this stuff, and I knew what you would have to say is fascinating, but I just sort of made assumptions, and I shouldn't have. So right into the next part of it is about this laser technology. Now, what exactly were you developing? I mean, as much as you can talk about. I mean, what was it that you were developing? What was it that you thought your purpose was? Et cetera.
Well, all right. I got into the electro-optics business back relatively soon after high school, about 1977, I think it was, roughly. And this is when lasers were really starting to appear out there in industry. And this was back when we had ion gas tube lasers or helium neon lasers. And these tended to be used as measurement devices and also for other purposes like building semiconductors and things like this. So I got exposed to that very easy.
Starting as targeting as well, right? Like for targeting?
Well, the targeting issue, that comes a little bit later, but mostly it was having to do with metrology, measurement, and just industrial applications. Okay, but the bottom line is that I got very involved in that and all of the quantum physics and everything involved in all that and all the science. Well, when we got the contract with the NSA people, I had just set up a facility, a shop, to do other things, and that's a whole other story in itself. You got to read the book to hear about that. But when what the NSA people wanted me to do was to build solid state lasers. Okay, these are little itty bitty solid state lasers, and this was a brand new technology. It was really in its infancy at the time. And myself and our associates had developed some electronics for driving these things, and of course there's optics involved, so I was involved in that. But the NSA was taking these solid-state lasers and they were using them to make gun sights, and they were putting these gun sights on weapons. Of course, they were giving them to the Contras. The Contras were putting them on their law rockets and their machine guns and what have you. And they're working in the jungle, and of course these lasers were very effective for jungle warfare. Anywhere there's low light conditions, it obviously gave them an advantage over the Sandinistas. And I had a contract for about 40,000 lasers, which doesn't seem like a big deal, but back then that made me the biggest laser manufacturer in the world for a short period of time. And, of course, they never intended to complete the contract. It was mainly to screw me over. It was like a $2 million contract, and, of course, they were never going to let me actually have $2 million. I mean, that would be like throwing gasoline on a fire. But anyway, that only lasted for about a while, or about a year or so, and when I got out of that, after having built the components for their laser sights, I decided this was something I'd always been interested in anyway, because I was very much a weapon-type person, and I've always been trying to put lasers on weapons for accuracy and what have you. But I developed some lasers for gun sights. At the time, these were the most accurate lasers in the world for use on gun sights. I was, in fact, my laser was I had competitors, don't get me wrong, and those competitors are still out there, but what I did was build a laser that would fit on a regular police duty weapon and could still fit in a holster, could take all sorts of abuse, and would maintain a very, very high level of accuracy no matter what. And of course, duty. Anytime you're using something in duty, it's like military. It's a life and death situation. Before they're going to put it on their weapon and they're going to trust their life to that, it has to be extremely reliable and in every different way. And that was what we did: was create a product that was fulfilled all these missions. So that was all law enforcement, and that was primarily to stop police from shooting people, because the idea was that if I put the cop put a laser on the cop's gun and the cop points his gun at somebody and he turns on the laser, chances are he will not pull the trigger, because the person that has the gun pointed at him will comply with the commands, so to speak. So it really was meant to save lives, not to take lives. Obviously, the military got involved. I started selling these things to all of the special forces all around the world, mostly in the NATO countries, Western European countries, and a few others. I didn't really sell in any Asian countries or Middle East. I sold a little bit in the Middle East, but of course Israel was really, really down on that. I was they got very upset if I dealt with any Let's put it this way. I sold a big order to the United Arab Emirates, and they freaked out. Everybody freaked out over that, and that was the last time I sold anything to any Arabs. But, but to point that out, though, I should also mention, though, a lot of my designs were stolen and shipped over to Israel multiple different occasions. The CIA was really good about that. I'd send something out for evaluation, and the next thing I'd know, they'd send it off to Israel without even asking me. So, not too cool.
Yeah, you're not the only guy to ever tell me something like that. To be honest with you, it seems as though they were constantly exchanging technology and little advances back and forth. So it seemed to be, one of those sort of house rules when it came to things there. You weren't allowed to profit from it, but if they could send them a sample and let them duplicate it themselves, reverse engineer it, then that was fine.
Well, they tried to, but again, this has been an off and on thing multiple times. When I started dealing directly with Shin Bet, which is their internal people over there, it's kind of like their FBI, I guess. they had ideas. Okay, they had a program to put lasers on weapons over there. It was kind of a universal system, and they basically sent out their requirements to all of the various manufacturers, and of course, Israelis they always have extremely high standards for anything that they do. And nobody could build anything that was good enough for them. My product was the only thing that even that met their requirements. And they tried everything they could to rip me off and what have you. And it got so bad that I finally just told them, I said, look, whatever you have, just keep it. It's yours. I'm giving it to you as a gift. You're not stealing it from me because I'm giving it to you. But that's it. No more cooperation. So they get really upset when you do that, because it's almost like sport for them. They have this thing. Oh God, I don't want to get too into it, but if you know about the Day of Atonement, they do this thing where they have this religious holiday where they atone for their sins, and everyone thinks it's for things they've done in the past. No, it's for things that they're going to do in the future. They're asking for forgiveness for their sins in advance. Okay, if that tells you anything. So
wow,
yeah.
I've never heard that before, actually.
Yeah, well, that's what the Day of Atonement is. It's asking for forgiveness for things you're going to do in the following year, not things you did the last year, but the things you have yet to do.
Wow.
I mean, and they think Christians are bad, we can do anything, and then all we got to do is ask for forgiveness. Hell, they ask for forgiveness before they even do it.
Well, nothing like getting a jump on the day, right?
Yeah, I guess. Anyway, but yeah, so... That's my, but I got all kinds of stories of dealing with Israel that are kind of wacky like that. But anyway, I hope that kind of gives people an idea of what my connections were. But it's hard for people to understand because the thing is that this, when you talk CIA and NSA and all that, it's really huge. It's much larger than anybody could imagine. There's way more people working working in these agencies than are on the payroll, so to speak. It's really big. So.
Well, yeah, that's always been my contention, is that, you have no clue actually what the personnel level is of these agencies because they have many outside contractors. They have what they call contract agents, which are different than contractors, by the way. There's all sorts of assets that are working on their behalf as agents of, although they're not agents directly, right? So really, the hugeness of this, of these organizations is just almost incalculable, and plus, again, so nebulous that it would be almost impossible for the average person to trace. I mean, unless you're actually in that community, you don't have an idea. And then on top of that, because some people are supposed to be compartmentalized from one another, and certain assets maintain, secrecy from one another as fail-safes or whatever else. Even within the community, you may not be fully aware of exactly how many people that are working toward the same project even are around you, depending. So, but this is like, it sounds as though I'm talking out of both sides of my mouth about this, right? But in reality, I mean, I'm not too far off, am I?
Well, there's this applies to so many different things. For example, for years and years and years they tried to get me out to Area 51, and this was for alien UFO type stuff, because that's another big part of this whole story. And if that's it's a good example of people not knowing not knowing what the other hand is doing. Obviously, you get it out to an agent area like that where you've got all kinds of people working on all kinds of projects, and nobody knows what the other person is doing. One of the things I think that they felt that I was valuable for was that I had the ability to manage large groups of people doing all kinds of crazy things and put it together in a cohesive way. So, bit of a tangent, but hope that helps.
No, well, you're obviously intelligent enough to multitask and also create puzzle pieces that you can put together yourself later so that there's no need to vet information through your employees and things like that. In other words, a sort of a sub-compartmentalization within your own organization, right?
Well, it's not a lot of people see the big picture. Building a car. Obviously, there's lots of different technologies that go into building the car, and certain people have to kind of be able to put it all together and see the big picture. So, yeah, that's sort of what I did.
Right. Okay. And about Area 51, and all that. You've never actually made it out there?
No, hell no. You don't get out there and they don't let you go. Once they get you out there, they don't let you go. I mean, Bob Lazar talks about it, guys pointing machine guns at you, intimidating you and threatening you and all that. I had no interest in that at all. I had a wife and kids and, my own business and stuff. And what do I want to be shipped out to the damn desert for to work in a damn underground facility? Forget that.
Understandable, but I just thought, because... I just figured I would ask, it just made sense. So.
Well, I did my, we didn't even get into the UFO stuff real quick, but I'll just for the sake of continuity, I'll throw that in there. It was after I had my big falling out with the Ollie North people back in, I think it was 91, something like that. I almost immediately fell into the people that were dealing with Billy Meyer. Okay, if people don't know who Billy Meyer is, he's the guy that supposedly made contact with Pleiadians and was actually given technology and things like this. Mm-hmm. And I was sort of recruited to be involved with these people. And of course, when you do that, immediately that put me under even more scrutiny by the people. And I think this was something that was destined to happen anyway, because I was introduced to ideas and concepts involving, beam ships, if you will. And it was some of my manufacturing skills. I didn't even mention this, but prior to getting involved with the NSA, I had a manufacturing operation where I was doing heavy silver electroplating on non-metallic objects, and I was doing this for actually making jewelry for Neiman Marcus. But what I was actually doing was I was developing a process that would turn out to be connected to a manufacturing process used for making UFOs. And of course, this kind of freaked them out because of my laser background and my semiconductor background and what have you, and my weapons background and all that. And then they see me start to mess around with the fine silver and whatnot, and they thought, oh my God, because it just so happens that that's what they make these UFOs out of, is fine silver. And the process for making a UFO is very similar to the process of making a semiconductor, only it's like a semiconductor that's the size of a house, if you will. So, yeah, if you look at the little microchips that we put in our cell phones right now and our little itty-bitty little, you look at a SIM card, it's got an itty-bitty little tiny chip that holds, 50 gigs or something like that. Well, imagine that very same technology, multiply that technology by a factor of, say, 1,000 times advanced, and then take that chip and use that same technology to make a chip device that's the size of a house, with the same microscopic complexity as the most advanced microchip that we could possibly even build. In fact, the complexity is much more advanced than our most advanced microchip, and except it's huge. So that's essentially what a UFO is.
Yeah, somebody once described this to me as placing the entire internet on your SIM card is kind of like the amount of information that ends up, the amount of conductivity there. If you equate it to storage, it would be just about the same kind of thing, right?
Oh, it's even beyond that. Because now you're talking about the Akashic Records. Are you familiar with that concept, the Akashic Records?
Well, somewhat, but I would love to hear you talk about it.
All right, well, the Akashic Records, of course, is a very metaphysical term. You'll hear your New Age types refer to that as the so-called historical record of all human history from day one to I think it only goes up to 2012. They cover epochs, but basically it's all human history and all human knowledge is contained in these records. And your beam ships basically have all of that information inside of them, and that's part of it. Beam ships are just incredible. They're like living entities, if you will. They do have a consciousness. If you could think of a living machine, that's what these beam ships are. But yeah, not only are they able to do all these incredible things, but they also contain all of the information of the universe essentially in their computer banks, if you will.
Well, this is where people have tried to relate to me the narratives about Thoth and all that, right?
About what now?
About Thoth. There's a figure in the unwritten history called Thoth and all this, where there was a different rise and a different fall of mankind. In other words, there's been we could take our written history as it exists now and multiply it by about 10 because actually it's all been lost before and all that, right?
Well, to tell you exactly how it works, there's actually epochs which last about 20,000 years, and the Earth has had, who knows, maybe 1 million of these epochs that it has been through, and every time we pass through one of these epochs, it goes through one of these polar shifts, which causes the everything to pretty much get wiped out and have to start over again. And this is just the mechanics of how it works. And we are at the very end of the current epoch, and we're getting ready to transition. It's kind of like it's a school year. If you look at it as a K through 12. The epoch is essentially K through 12 schooling, and we're all ready to graduate. It's time to graduate, and a lot of us get to go home. Some of us have to keep doing it over. There is reincarnation, believe it or not. Many of us have been here many times, reincarnated many lives, and we're all going to get to graduate here very soon, and we should be looking forward to it.
Well, right, and there's more than one spiritual belief system that understands that we're at the end of a cycle. It may not have exactly come to an abrupt end at 2012, as a lot of people predicted. That was December 21st, 2012. But I think that's due to a misreading. Actually, we're in the process of the end of an age for certain.
That's not entirely true because. Let's just real quick. If we look at the Montauk jump chair, okay, some people like Al Bielek likes to talk about that. They were able to go up and back in time and up and forward in time. They could go back. They could see Christ crucified. They could see dinosaurs. They could see all this stuff. But they could only go up as far as 2012. They get up to 2012 and they hit a black wall. That's it. They could go no further. So. When people thought that we were going to have a crisis or a tumultuous change at 2012, no, that's not true at all. What did change is more of a, and this isn't a spiritual thing per se, but there was a change, and basically what it is if you have to understand is that these things are very, very slow, and changes, they don't happen like flicking a light switch. They happen very slow. Humans can't take radical change like that. We have to be given it to us in a teaspoon. And so if you look at what happened, what changed, the negative forces on Earth lost their power at 2012, basically. They're still doing everything they can to destroy the world and complete their satanic agenda and what have you, but it's not happening the same way. The balance of power has shifted. And people like myself and people who are waking up and learning to use their psychic skills, we are coming into that now, and those changes are going to increase rapidly at this point, and there's nothing that they can do about it, and they know about it. Prior to 2012, they were able to have some control and some ability to manipulate these historical events, and that has stopped. They can no longer look forward in the future. They are moved into a completely reactionary mode, and we are in charge now. And it may not seem like it, but yes, the timeline has shifted, and we are moving into a different timeline, and we have the ability to make that happen and to manifest these changes. So this is where people like you and I are coming into our power, and this is why it's so important. And we go on the radio and that we talk about these things. What we are doing is we are waking people up because everybody needs to wake up, and this is what 2012 and the change and after the time that we're in right now, this is what it's all about. We are all waking up right now. We've been asleep for 20,000 years, and those of us that are fortunate enough to be alive at this time are able to witness what's coming, and it's a good thing, and we should all be very excited and have no fear. And when these powers that be try to fill us full of all these dire predictions about horrible things happening, don't listen to them, because it's all good from here on out. And I'm not saying that death and pain is going to go away, but we contracted. We made a contract to do these things, and people that have to experience negative timelines and bad things happening to them right now, it's part of the contract they made when they came here. But bottom line is that it's changed. We are on the downward slope now. We've hit the peak, and we're on our way down. The light of the tunnel. We're at the light at the end of the tunnel now. That's pretty much what 2012 was.
Right, and I mean, even just from a personal standpoint, I've got to say that ever since that time period, there has been a lot of change. I mean, one can feel it in their bones, pretty much. Even those who, excuse me, aren't necessarily awake, I think, have noticed a shift, have noticed a change. A lot of them are, reacting negatively, because after all, when you're being awoke from a slumber, sometimes it can be unpleasant. So, and there was an unpleasantness to becoming, sort of aware a little bit ahead of that 2012 time period for me. But the fact is that all of this change seems to be going in the right direction. I have a feeling nowadays that the darkness that does still exist in the world is definitely going to be lifted. And I mean, I'm just speaking for myself here. But I've noticed that among most people that are friendly to me now at this point, which by the way, that's a smaller number than it used to be. Because after all, I'm still in the category of being, a little too far out there for a lot of my contemporaries, it seems. But among the people that are friendly with me, we are starting to notice that there is a change coming. There may be different viewpoints as to exactly how painful the growing pains might be here, but there is definitely growth that is occurring here. This much can be recognized by anybody, regardless of what their belief system is, I think, as long as their eyes are even beginning to open.
Yeah, well, but I don't want to make this into a religious thing. I really don't like the whole concept of religion per se. It's like when I start talking about Satan or dark entities, the dark, the darkness out there, the dark spirit, if you will. People think, oh yeah, Catholic Church, blah blah blah, BS, Christianity, yada yada yada, and it's like, how foolish is that? You're talking about an entity that's been here since creation, and you're trying to lump it into some man-made construct that's been around for like 6,000 years. It's foolish, extremely foolish.
No, I agree with you. That's the thing. That's why I never claimed to fully understand, the entirety of it all. But I can say that that I am witnessing a remarkable time, and I don't even know necessarily that I will be here to experience it all, but perhaps I'll return and see the rest. I feel a bit more hopeful than I did, and that's kind of a strange thing because I'd always been sort of pessimistic. I always kind of felt the shadow, throughout most of my life. I would call it the shadow that seemed to be over the world, and this has nothing to do with Christianity. I'm not a Christian. The reality is that the bad intent breeds a bad atmosphere. I don't care who you ask. I mean, if you're around bad people, you don't feel good. You know what I mean? If you're around bad things, you don't feel good. You don't feel free. You feel constricted and confined. This is just a reality of the human condition, in my opinion, regardless of where you think it came from or who actually inspires it. So I don't believe it's a religious conversation. I believe it's a matter of consciousness.
Well, I am a Christian. I was raised a Christian, and I think that's important because a lot of people that do get involved in these things, they don't. If they don't have that, they kind of tend to drift off and go nuts because this is kind of overwhelming and very difficult for people to comprehend, and they do need an anchor. especially when you're dealing with issues that are of a spiritual nature. And when we talk about psychic things and human energy and psychic skills and psychic power, these are of the spiritual world. And when you get heavily involved with these CIA people and the NSA types, and deeper you go, you find out that everything revolves around issues that you would consider religion per se. So when you look at the military and you look at the CIA and all that, you don't really look at them. You think, okay, this is all real world stuff. But the bottom line is that development of psychic skills and spiritual power and energy is a very, very big part of what they do. And they almost look down on average people for not having that. Like, for instance, the ability for people to comprehend the reality of UFOs and aliens and things like that. All of those people out there that walk around, beside us that think that that's fantasy, those people are kind of looked down upon by the ones that are in the know. And they're very smug about that, and they really think that we are all a bunch of stupid animals. And that's one of the reasons why I chose to go this path, because I felt that I am not better than everybody else.
Well, right, and that leads us into a discussion about your book, which I'd like you to mention again. I know it's only available on Kindle right now, but give the title again. And this is Stephen D. Kelly, by the way. The D helps so you don't get confused, by the way, when you're looking for him, because I tried that. But Kelly is spelled Kelley, and the title of your book, sir?
The title of the book is Cities Under the Plane.
Right, and like I said, that's available on Amazon Kindle. And we briefly touched on this because you talked about these facilities, and we talked about how there are entire cities, under particular areas and stuff like that. And you had mentioned briefly that there was the psychic spiritual center of some of these things, which was, well below and all that. And I wondered if you could elaborate about that just a little bit.
I mentioned, of course, that they are very much involved in recruiting and using psychic skill and people with psychic skills. It's kind of like if you think of spy warfare, remote viewing and using remote viewers to go and spy on stuff, from a safe distance. This is very, very much a part of our intelligence system. And it's also because they are aware of the ability of people to use these skills in remote viewing and spying whenever they have a very sensitive facility like the one underneath the Getty Museum here in Los Angeles. The first floor of the underground, if you will, is devoted to housing personnel who are there for the purpose of blocking any psychic intruders or remote viewers. And obviously it didn't work very well because we were able to go down there and look at everything, but they're there. So, yeah.
Well, and that's awfully fascinating. And meanwhile, I guess this is a question that just occurs to me while I was listening to you. Isn't some of, your viewpoints sort of against the grain when it comes to, say Catholicism or Christianity, regarding some of the more, what they would call supernatural, but I simply always correct people and say, no, that's just the natural world. Wouldn't that fly sort of in the face of that belief system a little bit?
Not at all. Because first of all, you have to consider Christ did not start the Catholic Church. Okay? That was a man did that. Mm-hmm. All right? The Bible, same thing. A man wrote it. Christ did not write the Bible. And one of the first things that I discovered in this process after I woke up, after I woke up, I had to go back and I had to reread the Bible. I had to reread all these ancient texts. I had to go back and study history and everything. I had to completely start over and reevaluate everything I thought I knew. And one of the things I figured out real quick was, and this is something that I really upsets the so-called Christians, is that the Old Testament is almost completely of satanic origin. All right.
That's an interesting statement because I've heard this before, and I find it kind of fascinating because that's definitely not the mainstream view. Could you explain that a little more?
Well, first of all, and I don't want to turn this into a Bible discussion, but it's very simple. Even if you were to go back and you look at the Dead Sea Scrolls, which were unearthed here not too long ago, you'll see that there are many, many chapters that were removed. In fact, there are more chapters from the Bible that were removed than are still in the Bible, based just on the Dead Sea Scrolls. So when someone starts thumping their King James Version and tells me that that's the end all of everything, I ask them if they've ever read the Dead Sea Scrolls, and of course they haven't. So if you haven't read the Dead Sea Scrolls, you haven't read the Bible. All right, and that's really neither here nor there, but that's just an example. But for instance, and again, this is not what I want to focus on, but if you just read Genesis, you'll see almost immediately that Abraham, the father of so many of these religions, was a pimp. He was a massive pimp. His wife, Sarah, was a whore. And this is something that a lot of Christians, they supposedly read their Bible. They don't even see that. But it's right there. I mean, you barely read, get into the first chapter of the book, and it's right there. Mm-hmm. So the religions that are based on Abraham have to take that in consideration. And there's a lot of other issues involved, and that is that the royal bloodline does not travel down from the man; it travels from the woman. So Abraham was not the king that everybody thinks he was. It was the woman that carried the royal bloodline. And that is a tangent, of course, but the point I'm trying to make is just that it's just not what people think. It really isn't.
Right,
So,
and even the New Testament is highly redacted as well. I mean, there are other texts that I've sort of familiarized myself with over the years. I can't quote from them or anything, but I mean, there was actually a Gospel according to Judas. There is a great deal of books that have been removed. I mean, if you even study the mainstream view of the Council of Nicaea and all that, you understand that the way this book was put together is kind of suspect to begin with. I mean, right?
well, yeah, obviously, and if you look at the King James Version, I mean, clearly that was written to please a king, and they removed what they thought didn't coincide with what the king wanted in there. So yeah, it's extremely screwed up. But the thing is, though, is when you start to understand the true nature of reality and how the mechanics of how the universe works with the graduation system and how, there's, for instance, in a nutshell, there's multiple levels of density. And these levels of density represent a reality, and when you're on a certain level, that your reality is really that density is all you can see. For instance, there's about 7 or 8 levels. The creator being at the very top of the level, and at the highest level, of course, is 100% spiritual, 0 physical, and the lowest level is 100% physical, 0 spiritual. That would be like rocks and inanimate objects. Then you have plants and animals, and then you have humans, and humans, of course, have a little bit of a spirituality. They have a concept of the creator. That's what separates us from the animals, and a certain level of consciousness. Above us are the aliens, of course, many of the aliens, and not all of the aliens. Some of them are on the same level as us, but a lot of the ones that are visiting us now, the little gray guys and what have you, they are on higher levels of reality. And then there's levels above that where you have something like a limbo or a where the ghosts go, and that's sort of like that's what most people, when they're thinking of heaven, they're really thinking of this level 5. Above that level is where the angels are, and above the angels we have another level which is ascended masters, and this is your Jesus, Buddha, and all of the other big names that we talk about. And then, of course, above the ascended masters is the great oneness or source or the creator. And so it all trickles down. And for instance, like if you have an entity in the fourth level or fifth, or an alien, and they come down here and they say they created humans and we're hybrids and what have you, and like the Anunnaki, you've got ancient Sumerians and Aztecs and what have you, and they're worshiping these fourth level densities as gods and creators. What they don't realize that there's multiple levels above them, and yes, they did have a hand in the physical creation or hybridization of the humans, but that doesn't mean that they weren't created by a level above them. So that's how it works, and you really do need to understand that in order to see the big picture. And when you do get to this level of comprehension, which is beyond most people, then you can see that the Bible story or the existence of Christ and creation really does work. It's all part of that, and but again, like I said, it's like for instance, humans, they like to think of everything in earthly terms. They like to imagine the God working toward using linear forward progression of time. There is no time. Obviously, time is only relative to this level. We're on this ball of mass flying around the universe, and we think that the whole universe has to follow the same rules that we're held to because we're sitting on this little ball. It doesn't work that way. You get your butt off the earth, you'll see that everything is different. And that's one of the things that I try to teach people when they look at these things, is that they need to learn to be observers. And as an observer, you need to be able to pull your body away from the earth and observe it as if you were not even part of the earth. And when you do that, you'll see that it's much easier to absorb this information without becoming emotionally attached, and that is a very big part of becoming enlightened, is being able to separate your emotions from information.
Well, because obviously sentimentality clouds your ability to fully observe things, to judge things. If you're afraid, you'll shut your eyes. If you're enamored with something, you'll stare at it too long and miss something else. So an even keel needs to be developed in order to actually appreciate the universe as it is, right?
Well, let me just give you an example. For instance, it's very easy for us to get upset with things that our fellow humans do. Okay, for instance, the way the Israelis are treating the Palestinians, obviously that makes most people very angry. But the point is that in order to become enlightened, you have to develop this concept of unconditional love. And in order to do that, you have to be able to put yourself in everyone else's shoes, including the bad guy. And you also have to realize something else that's kind of difficult to comprehend, and that is that we really are all the same person, taking turns living our lives in each other's bodies. And when you remember that we all came from Source, and that ultimately we will all return to Source, that means that we are still that one entity, which is Source. So, when people think of creation, they think that creation is not a manufacturing. It was not manufactured. In other words, God did not sit there and take ingredients and mix these ingredients together and create something that didn't exist from these ingredients. It's all Source. Every bit of matter in the universe is all God. When you say we are all sons of God or whatever, yes, we are all part of creation. We are all part of Source, and that means we are all the same thing, the same person, the same thing. So when we fight against each other and hate each other, we're hating ourselves, which is absolutely silly.
Okay, so you subscribe to essentially the same thing that I do. I mean, obviously you're quite a bit more eloquent about it than I am normally, but the fact is, I believe that we're all, part of the same thing. We're all part of the same living sphere, let's just say, and that is the best word I can put to it, because obviously I'm a human being, so I put earthly kind of terms to it. But unfortunately, in a poetic sense, I once heard it said that we're all sort of daydreams in the same brain, and that's kind of close.
Yeah, we're all part of God's dream. We're all a big dream. God's dreaming, and that's what we are.
Yeah, and just all different characters, but essentially, like you said, as we were all split from the same places, we were all, part of the same thing. We'll all return to the same thing. That's pretty well in line with what I believe as well. Although I do see a synergy between a lot of these belief systems, and I think that you can actually relate them all together if you're open-minded enough, and see that they essentially teach the same lesson. If you take a step back and you don't necessarily read things verbatim and try and take things in a very sort of fundamentalist way, I guess. That doesn't help anything.
Well, that's that old parable about the blind man describing the elephant, right?
You got it.
That's exactly what it is. We're all describing the same thing, but we're describing a different part of the same thing.
You got it. He's got a long tail. He's got big ears. It's got a long trunk.
No, he's like a tree. No, he's like a wall. No, he's like a snake. Yeah.
But if you put it all together, it'll start to make sense. Yeah, that's exactly how I view it. And this is really a fascinating thing, because I noticed that we're all, well, let's just say a lot of the people that I'm encountering lately seem to be viewing the world in the same way. And again, this doesn't have to be a religious discussion, because, as I said before, I view consciousness very much the same way. I think it is all interconnected. I think that we are all conscious at the same time for a reason. Again, the use of the word time, I apologize, but the fact is that we are all conscious simultaneously, let's just say, and regardless of where that lands on the timeline, that has some significance. We're obviously all interconnected, and I think all living things are actually interconnected in one way or another. And if eventually this little ball turns to a cinder, it really is irrelevant, because we will all simply go somewhere else.
Exactly. We'll go back to where we came from. It's no big loss, really.
Yeah, I mean, it's almost like this is the experiment, in a way, I guess. And I know that sounds fatalistic, but that's the thing. I don't view it as fatalistic. I simply view it as it is the cycle of life, for lack of a better phrase. This is what's going to happen. This is what has happened, and this is what will happen. All at the same time, not different from one another, but actually all things are simultaneously correct. But then again, I'm crazy, I guess. So we talked about how, there's this effort to sort of shield things from psychic attack, from use of individuals, let's just say, infiltrating by psychic means and all that. But there's also, these advanced areas down there where there's just these giant constructs designed so that they can be self-sufficient as well, but also interconnected, as we talked about on Tuesday, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Now, a lot of people say to me, well, if we're all the same thing and we're all coming to, to a point of awakening, and this is just a comment that comes to me from people that don't, engage in this kind of discussion. If that's true, then how is it that the so-called bad guys at this point aren't also awakening to it, aren't also coming around to the same conclusion? If most of the populace is starting to wake up, how come they're not waking up and seeing what they're doing is wrong just all by themselves?
Okay, well, first of all, this is a pretty important lesson, and we should get into this right now. And that is that the entire universe is divided into two sides: service to self and service to others. Okay, STO and STS. You have to make that decision. We talk about two sides of reality, the yin and yang, and the yin and yang symbol is a perfect representation of this concept. After we are on the third level of density, and the third level of density is represented by this yin and yang symbol, or this duality of the service to self and the service to others. When we graduate from this level, we will no longer be under this duality system. People think that the whole universe is built under duality. No, it's not. The higher up you go, and when you reach the higher level of spirituality, when you reach the fourth level and beyond, you do have to make a decision, and you have to choose between service to self and service to others. You have to take a side. And those of the rulers of the earth who are dedicated to service to self, the selfish ones, they have made that conscious decision, and they are stuck with it. And they've lived like kings on the earth, and they want to maintain that status quo. And of course, this is kind of like the Christ versus Satan thing. We're trying to recruit one side to the other. It's actually it's a very good analogy. And what's happening, and that's what this transition is all about, is that we are in a level where we now have to choose which direction we're going to go. And this is incredibly important. And so this is why the most important message that I can get out to people is the concept of service to others. Because when you are developing your psychic skills, one of the first lessons you learn is that you do need to serve others to increase this energy, this chi flow, if you will. One of the quickest ways of doing that is through service to others, and we see that in energy healing. When people learn to do Reiki and healing with energy or healing with intention, one of the first things that they learn is that the more they do this helping others, the more ability they have to help others, and that is the nature of serving others. And so it comes with rewards. Now, when we do this graduation and we do go into the fourth level that is coming, the two sides will separate. And they will separate for all eternity, at least until the end of time when everything goes back to source. Okay, because ultimately everything will go back to source. That is the opposite of the Big Bang. It will all return to the point of the beginning, which was the Big Bang. This is a process that happens over and over again. That's the nature of God. It's like a heartbeat. The Big Bang has probably happened many, many times. But the point is that when you choose to become or to remain service to self, what happens is that when the graduation process comes, or the boat comes to pick us up and take us home, those that have chosen the service to self lifestyle or become part of that energy will stay that way. And all life forms, be they mammal, insect, plant, reptile, bird, dog, cat, whatever species, different species, will all become human. All life develops into a human form. That is the so-called image of God thing. All species of alien are eventually reaching a human type of appearance. But when you choose the service to self, you go into a degeneration and you degenerate back to your original form. And that is why so many of these alien creatures that we have, the little grays and what have you running around, that is why they are so busy trying to collect human DNA and do all these biological genetic experiments, because they're doing everything they can to stop this regression. And you'll hear a lot of these people that they go through these abductions and what have you, they communicate with these entities. They say, why are you doing this? And they say, we are doing this because our species is regressing and we are trying to save our species. Well, the reason why they have to do that is because they chose service to self. The service to other entities stay human, and that is why aliens out there of the like Pleiadians, who are actually of a human form, they are us. That is what happens when you choose the service to others. You stay human, you advance, you go farther. When you choose service to self, you degenerate, you do not move ahead. You stay stuck in that level 4. So this is Star Wars. There is a battle in the universe going on. It's been going on for a long time. And it's between the service to self and the service to others. This is why we have the chemtrails. This is why we have Star Wars. This is why we have all these things going on in the skies above us right now, because there is a war going on between the entities that rule the earth, which are service to self, versus the entities that have come to remove those entities from the earth, and they are the service to other entities. So that is all going on around us right now, but we are pretty much oblivious to all that.
And probably better for it. I got to tell you something that comes to mind here, because you'd mentioned about having to go back and relearn and reread and re-examine things. after you became aware. You know what I find fascinating, and it's just, I know this is going to sound campy and silly, but the old Twilight Zone television show. Well, it just came to me. That whole the very famous episode where it's To Serve Man.
Yeah, cookbook. Yeah.
And it's a cookbook. Well, if you think about that in a deeper sense, and a lot of the stuff that Serling did, it looks totally different to you if you watch it when you're awake. Because, to be honest with you, it sounds almost as though he was showing you that paradigm between either, you could take this as to serve self or to serve others, right? He gave you an ambiguous statement in which there was a choice, right? And obviously the aliens in this, narrative decided to serve self, and they were serving self. Obviously, it was a cannibalistic thing. I mean, there's a multi-layered kind of, eloquent statement going on there, and in a lot of those episodes, I think.
But we are food to them.
Yeah, but that too.
Yeah.
That too, and that's another thing. But the reality is, I mean, seriously, if you examine the allegorical ramifications of a lot of those stories, and you extract the fact that obviously the technology's behind, and special effects was different and what have you. But I mean, really, the intellectual creation of those stories seems pretty solid to me nowadays. They were kind of silly to me as a kid. I mean, obviously they were created in the 60s, and I didn't see them until 10 years later, and yada, yada, yada. But the thing was, still pretty solid stuff. I know that sounds silly, and, we're having this deep discussion, but it's just one of those things that just kicked into my head and said, that's pretty much what he's describing there, because I always thought of that as, that's an interesting sort of choice of words that he used there. In order to, and that's not to say anything about the later episodes where, there were moral issues that were brought in by other writers, but Serling himself was an interesting guy, I think, and had a lot more to say if you re-examine that stuff later, and re-examining your history or entertainment or anything later on after your consciousness has shifted causes you to look at it through an entirely new set of eyes, in my opinion. So, okay, that was my little silly rant about the Twilight Zone. Sorry, but I found it relevant just during this part of the conversation. When did you discover this stuff about aliens? I mean, because you're one of the few people that doesn't speak about it as if it's a possibility, as if it's a remote thing. I mean, you speak about it just as if you were telling me about, the dog in your neighbor's yard. Mm-hmm. Why is that?
Well, it's like I've never been in New York City, but I believe it's there. I've never been to China, but I believe it's there. There's plenty of proof if you do your homework. And the thing is that when I got involved with the Billy Meyer people, they dumped a lot of stuff on me, pictures of UFOs and information about aliens and what have you. And of course, I didn't swallow it all immediately. I mean, I saw the photos and I thought, wow, these are pretty darn good photos, and it sure doesn't look like it was faked, and, it kind of planted the seed. But it took a good 20 years probably to really kind of get used to it all and to hash it all out. And, of course, that's where that research comes in. Once, you kind of lights a fire, and then you got to go with it and fill in all the blanks and collect all the puzzle pieces and try to put the puzzle together. You never get all the pieces to the puzzle, but after you put enough pieces together, you start to see it. You get a pretty good idea what the picture is. It's kind of like one of these game shows, or I'd like to solve it, Alex, or
Yeah, and it's pretty obvious after, even though there's a few letters missing. And you know why I ask this question is because quite often, people talk about tangible proof of certain things, and and there are realities that can be discerned from the incomplete jigsaw puzzles that are out there about a lot of situations that have occurred and are occurring in our world even today. But I just found it remarkable exactly, how comfortable you were discussing this. At the same time, it's, a few years ago, I got to be honest with you, a few years ago, I would have dismissed this entire conversation, about this, because I had not gotten to a point where, where I even, I thought it mathematically possible. I thought it realistically possible, but I felt as though we had no tangible proof. And at the same time, I also took an attitude that a lot of other people do, that, listen, if I were an advanced alien culture, why would I want to bother with these squabbling monkeys down here, which is pretty much how I viewed most of my fellow man up until a few years ago.
That's an important point, though, because remember, it doesn't matter what side you are on. If you're service to self or service to others, technically you're still trying to get the same thing, which is to return to source. We all want to return to source. It's just that they use different methods. So in other words, it behooves them to work with lower life forms, lower energy forms. So in other words, it's like I say, when we serve our fellow humans, we get a certain amount of grace, if you will, to use a Catholic term, or increased chi flow energy. We get our tally sheet as on the service to others goes up, however you want to look at it.
Well, even without these concepts, even without these religious...
The point I want to make though is that we don't just serve our fellow humans. We also serve lower level densities like animals, being kind to animals, helping these creatures, being kind to plants, trees, taking care of the earth, being, this kind of thing. This is the same thing. You get the same amount of credit for helping these lower levels as you do for helping the level that you're on already. And the same applies to the aliens. They want to get credit for being a good guy. They get that by helping the humans. And unfortunately, the service to self entities have methods that are less than loving, but in their own little minds, they think they're righteous and they think that they are doing everything the right way. It's just like when the conquistadors came to the New World and they slaughtered so many of the natives. They thought they were doing a good thing. They thought they were bringing God to the heathens. They thought they were, it's like the Americans and the Indians. We thought we were bringing civilization to the savages. Well, the methods were less than loving, but the intention was to serve. It's just they didn't do it in a very good way.
Well, right, and even without the constructs of any sort of religious, wording or whatever else, I mean, look, it's not hard to imagine that when you're kind to an animal, or when you're kind to your fellow man, or when you do something that is, and I hate to use one of these words, but even charitable, you receive sort of a good feeling from it. You can feel the residual effect. Almost like a rising feeling if you do it from a very heartfelt place, right? So this is something that you can easily observe. And in fact, if this is the kind of life you live, if you notice those who do dedicate their lives in the service of others, in the legitimate and honest service of others, are often some of the most happy and carefree people that you'll ever encounter, right?
Of course. Yeah, that's where it's at, really. People that have everything, they've got all this money and stuff. I mean, I'm sure there's a lot of things you can do to make yourself happy, but they're mostly distractions. But it's not until you get into that service to others mode that you really get. I mean, it's the energy, And if you want to look at this from a standpoint of possessions and having things and that sort of thing, people think, I hear this argument so often from people that are on the other side. They think, I can't possibly serve others unless I take care of myself, and yada, yada, yada. That's crap, all right? It's crap, because first of all, the more effort you put into helping other people, and the more you can teach other people to adopt this concept of serving others, the more they will be serving you, and the more you will get. And people come to me and they say, gosh, I'm trying so hard to do things for other people, and they turn around and they do things for me, and how am I ever going to get ahead, because I feel like too much is being done for me, and I'm not doing enough to get ahead of the curve. Well, it doesn't work that way. Of course, you're gonna have people doing things for you. And when I talk about the future, people think about what's the future going to be like. Well, if you go into the service to others timeline, you're going to have a future where richness and wealth will be measured in how much someone serves someone else. And the truly great people of that reality will be the ones that are completely dedicated to serving others. We will celebrate, rather than celebrating wealthy people who have amassed a bunch of crap and are totally service to self, we won't celebrate those people. We will celebrate those people that give it all away and have devoted their lives to serving others. And it won't be a competition to own crap. It'll be a competition to see who can help someone else more than the other person.
Yeah, see, there was and I don't recall it exactly, but I recall the lesson when I was a child of the long spoons. I can't recall exactly where it came from. Have you ever heard about that one?
No, that's a new one.
Well, there's this idea of long spoons, and what happens is there is a bowl of soup, let's just say, which is in the table there, and there's all these guys trying to feed themselves with these long, cumbersome spoons, and they can't seem to get the food to their mouths with these long implements because of where the food is. It is not until someone gets the brilliant idea that they should take the spoon and feed the guy who's on the other side of the table, and each of them beginning to feed one another, that things begin to work out correctly. In other words, if all you're interested in doing is feeding yourself, you may find that there is a great difficulty in keeping yourself nourished, depending on the length of the spoon. And I know I just butchered the hell out of that, but it's a proverb. It's in another language. I usually don't give it in English, but I know that it does exist. I somehow feel as though this was an African study that I did at one point that I learned this. But it's an interesting lesson because in reality, I think that's probably one of the keys to life. Is that is exactly as you're saying, and I love how you're putting it because. Service to self and service to others are entirely different trajectories for one to live their lives by. Uh-huh. So, I'm really grateful that you're sharing all this with us. Thank you.
Yeah, well, there's a lot of stories out there that kind of illustrate the same thing, but that really is number one. People, a lot of times people come to me and they want me to tell them, what do I do now? What do I do now? And that really is all there is to it. And also sharing information. We're responsible for learning. They call it forbearance, and it's almost like saying ignorance is no excuse. You are responsible for going out there and doing your homework and not being ignorant. You can't rest on ignorance. And you also have to share that information because information is energy. And when, like for instance, right now, when we're on the radio talking like this, we have people listening. All those people that are out there listening right now are actually sending us energy. Okay, we are actually receiving energy from those people. They're reciprocating as they are receiving information from us. We are receiving energy from them, and it goes both ways. When I do healing on somebody, I'm sending out energy and I'm getting information back. The information I get back is usually information about what it is that is wrong with the person that I'm trying to help. And that's the way it works. But the thing is that it's like doing psychic push-ups. The more you do it, the stronger you're going to get. The stronger your glow is going to be, your human biological energy field, your aura, all these things. It gets stronger. And another thing that's kind of important about this is that a lot of people talk about the negative influences of the electronics, the mind control, the cell phone towers, the assault of these various different programming, electronic programming and stuff like that. And they're trying to find ways of dealing with it, protecting themselves from this energy. Well, you want to protect yourself from this negative energy. The best way to do that is to serve others, because when you do this and when you become over 50% service to others, 51% or better service to others, you'll find that your energy field actually changes. And what I liken it to is a gravity. Gravity works in two different directions. You can put gravity out and you can take gravity in. If you are an energy user, an energy vampire, an energy sucker-upper, that is a service-to-self person. They are absorbing the gravity. That's like, imagine you're filling yourself with so many possessions that you're weighting yourself down and you're stuck on the earth because you've anchored yourself with these possessions and service to self. Whereas a spiritual person who is serving others is actually giving out the energy, is actually giving out the gravity. They are becoming lighter. They are separating themselves from the earth, and they are rising above it. And by the same token, if you look at these energies that they're using against us, and they're not all of this dimension, or this density. In other words, it's like all of the energy that we perceive in this reality fits somewhere on the electromagnetic spectrum. Okay, everything, light, magnetism, whatever, it's all somewhere on this electromagnetic spectrum. When you go into a higher level of reality, you are working to a completely different spectrum, which runs parallel to the electromagnetic spectrum. And obviously, this is a concept that is far beyond most people, but Tesla is a good example of somebody who began to understand this. There's a few other people, of course, that are very good. There's one physicist in particular. His name is Konstantin Mail, M-E-Y-L, Konstantin with a K. And he talks about this stuff, really, really good information. But he was the one that basically said that there is a completely different spectrum that runs parallel to the electromagnetic spectrum, and this is the spectrum that holds the scalar energies. And scalar is a type of energy that is actually can create reality in our third density, the one that we're in right now. So when you're doing magic, when you're manifesting, we talk about manifesting and soft energy and dark matter and all that stuff, that has to do with this fourth density and with the scalar spectrum. And scalar energy can actually alter reality in our third density. And we are actually beginning to use this energy in a lot of people who are using radionics devices. That's what radionics is. It's actually a scalar energy, and it is actually altering reality in our third level reality, third level density, by using these scalar fields. And we can get into what scalar is, but basically what it is it's two identical sine waves that are polar opposites. When I say polar opposites, I mean polarity as in a 90-degree, like a polarizing filters. If you rotate Polaroid filters 90 degrees, they completely black each other out. And this is sort of how scalar works. And what happens is when you take these two complementary sine wave functions, if you will, they create a pattern or an interference pattern, and this interference pattern actually contains the information which alters the reality. Tesla was able to discover this. Several scientists were able to discover this. This is something that, this is definitely a technology that is not being released to humans right now, although there are some of us, myself included, who are actually working in these technologies, and it's scaring the hell out of the powers that be.
Well, yeah, I had an interesting discussion with Larry Woods about magnetism and the use of those generators. You know what I'm talking about here, with the coils and all that.
Free energy stuff.
Yeah, exactly. And that led to a lot of discussions that were very similar to what we're talking about here, except, obviously there's a particular range in which, most natural life is comfortable in and everything else. And he was talking about, trying to maintain it so that it would not be harmful, because electromagnetic fields that are, not within this certain range are kind of damaging to the human organism, to any living thing. And we've examined this, many times, overhead power lines, et cetera, et cetera. But what you're talking about here, though, I think, is that if you actually change your level of vibration, in a sense, you kind of become immune to a lot of this stuff then, right? Well,
not exactly. It's that, okay, when when you are serving others and you're actually putting out energy, it's like a field. It's kind of like a magnetic field, like where you put two magnets, you try to push them together and they repel. It's the same thing. And I'll give you a good example, historical example that is a bit of a gone out on a tangent. But
Okay.
if you look at the Ark of the Covenant, okay, the Ark of the Covenant was a gravity generator. It was a device that put out gravity, and this is why it floated, and this is why they were able to use it to push the water back to cross the Sinai and all this. And because it was a gravity producer, the only people that could ever get close to it were the high priests, and the high priests were men who their lives were dedicated to serving others. Okay, so they had that gravity giving. So only a gravity giver could get close to this machine that gave out gravity. So if you were a gravity taker, a service to self person, and you got close to this device, you would overdose on gravity. And that's why normal people could not get close to it, because it would kill them. And so the same applies to us humans. And bear in mind, when I talk about machinery and devices that do these things, obviously anything that a machine can do, a human can also do. We have the power in our brains. Oh, God, the power that we have is just incredible. You have no idea of how much power humans possess. I mean, a handful of humans can duplicate the same amount of energy as the most powerful nuclear bomb that has ever been detonated on Earth. We have that much power.
Well, I have heard many times about psychic gatherings where they've attempted to, raise cities, elevate things that could not normally be elevated by human machinery, et cetera, and this isn't exactly the craziest notion, is it?
Well, no, of course they do that. It's like, for instance, how many of us have driven down the street, at nighttime, and we'd be daydreaming or something, and all of a sudden we notice that the street lights are turning off around us. Have you ever had that happen to you?
Oh, yeah, sure.
Well, that's what that is. That's that pillar of light coming out of your head. That's your energy. Is you're not seeing it, but your glow is what's shutting down those street lights. And when you get a bunch of people together that know how to use that energy, yeah, they can do some pretty crazy stuff. But that's what I'm all about. I want everybody to turn that energy on and to start focusing on developing those skills, because this world isn't going to be saved by militias with guns. This world is going to be saved and changed by those of us that wake up and realize that we can do instant manifestation, and we can use our power to create a reality that does not involve all of these evil entities.
Well, now look, I'm going to play a little devil's advocate here, because I am in accordance with a lot of what you're talking about. So try and understand, this isn't me being confrontational with you, but I mean, what would you say to somebody that hears this and says, "Well, this is just kind of silly fantasy. You're believing in magic and all this"? I mean, what do you say to somebody like that?
It's totally magic. I love the word magic. Magic is a Western word used to describe things that the people in the Eastern cultures call completely different things, But here, in fact, the original title for my book was Lasers, Cavers, and Magic. And, of course, that was because my business of lasers, dealing with the people in the undergrounds being the cavers, and then my developing of the psychic skill, i.e. magic. Healing is magic. My God, it's like, I don't care what you want to call it. Yeah, it's magic. But magic is real.
No, absolutely. And since you talk about, but you did mention that you do healing yourself. I hesitate to talk about this kind of stuff because it I don't know. It makes me feel a little uneasy sometimes to discuss this kind of stuff on the air myself. But I do find it fascinating. And how experienced are you with remote viewing, actually?
Well, a lot of people assume that I'm this incredible remote viewer. I'm not. There's a lot of people out there that are far better. But a lot of times when we do these things, we don't even know that we're doing it. So I've been told that I have an alter personality that lives on another dimension that is a real badass from what I understand, and I think that's one of the reasons why these guys can't touch me is because if they get even close to me, my altar will take them out.
Yeah, I understand what you mean. It's an oddity, but I mean, about this though. I mean, I just mentioned the remote viewing, but I mean, let's see.
All right. Well, let me put it this way: I'm a much better healer than I am a remote viewer. I mean, first of all, you can do almost anything that you put your mind to. It's like talking to spirits. It can be done. It's not something that I recommend to be done. But people think, oh, you know, so and so died. Can you talk to so and so for me? It's like, I mean, come on, really? You know, I mean, but at the same time, I am a Reiki master, and one of the levels of Reiki is actually doing that, is communicating with the other side. So to a lot of people, that's a bad thing, but you have to understand that you have to be aware that what is over there, and for instance, like when you talk about channeling, I'm not a big fan of channelers because I don't believe that so many people out there say, oh yeah, I'm talking to Angel Gabriel or angel this angel or that angel, or I'm channeling this or I'm channeling like that. They all, you know, everybody wants to be special and everybody wants to channel somebody, but you know, we all have to control our egos, and you know, even if you are special, you don't have to go around telling everybody about it.
Yeah, I mean, after all, you know, John Edwards and people like this, you know, not that I'm saying that these things can't be done, but I'm not buying it. There's actually a lot of charlatans out there that claim they can do things, and they just use some, you know, old time-tested sort of techniques in order to make it appear as though they can. But that doesn't mean, now, even though I've said that there are a lot of charlatans, it doesn't mean that I don't believe that there are individuals who can tap into the greater sense, who can tap into what's around them and actually experience the rest of the world. That's why I refuse the term supernatural regarding these kind of things, because I don't think it's supernatural. I think it's natural. It's just something that, you know, we are taught at so early an age not to use, you know. And I brought up with a psychic who I actually do believe is a psychic, which is rare for me because there aren't that many. You know, outside, let's just say among the people that claim to be psychic, I would say that a whole lot of them are just, you know, dime store magicians of one kind or another. But
well, everybody's psychic. You know, everybody's psychic. But again, we're all on the fluoride. We're all drinking out of aluminum cans. We're all, you know, people are watching TV. They're getting bombarded with these ridiculous scalar wavelengths. We're living in houses with AC current running through our houses and Wi-Fi signals and cordless phones and everything. I mean, there's a ton of crap out there designed to shut that down and to stifle this growth. And this is part of that transition. The powers that be are doing everything they can to keep everyone from waking up and realizing these psychic skills. And this is another reason why we are a consumer society. They are trying to get us to be addicted to junk and to want things and to be selfish and all this, because that is part of the way that they stifle our spiritual growth. And it's through spiritual growth that we get these powers. And I'll tell you, one of the most fantastic powers that you get when you develop your psychic skill is the power of your voice. And that means is that when you say something, people are going to listen to you, and they're not even going to know why they want to listen to you. It's going to be like moths to a flame. They will be compelled to listen to you. They will come to you, and they will want to know more, and they don't even know why. But that's one of the gifts that you get when you develop these skills.
Well, that's because once you achieve harmony with your energy, you're not simply speaking with your voice. You're actually, you know, sort of, well, illuminating, let's just say, and I hate to use that term, but you're sort of illuminating a space, and you know, as it's often observed, people are attracted to shiny things and bright things. So when you sort of turn on that light, which is sort of rare among a crowd, you're going to turn heads, and they may not necessarily know what they're looking at or anything else, but they're going to pay attention. I mean, that's essentially how that works, right?
Yeah. That's pretty much what it is. It's you become real attractive, and people don't even know why.
Yeah, it's a it is a strange thing, and I've been at better points in my life than I am now. To be honest with you, I've been in better sync than I am now. It's my own fault. I've sort of fallen out of practice. Let's just say I haven't maintained myself as well as I should, but I completely understand what you're saying. I'm not, again, exactly the same as you or anything. Obviously, I mean, I'm a little different, but you know, I have no argument with anything that you said here. So, wow, you know, and I didn't expect to go in this direction. So, but as we said, we were going to sort of wing this and see what happened. And I'm really glad. I'm really glad that you did this with me tonight, because this is extremely enlightening, in my opinion. I don't know what the listeners are thinking about it. I'll get the feedback later, but I got to tell you, regardless of what you guys think, I'm enjoying the hell out of this. So,
hey, well, number one rule of the universe: service to others. That's it.
Yeah, I mean, but I know that if somebody finds this or hears this, you know, it may not make an instant impact, but this will definitely enlighten at least one person. And I'll tell you what, if that's all I do at a time, that's fine with me too. You know, if the majority of you have kind of tuned out because here he goes into these esoteric sort of subjects again. Well, sorry, but I got to tell you, I think that this is really valuable information. And again, you know, it's something that a lot of us do agree about, trying to get back to our natural way of being, our true selves, if you will. And this is part of it. This is part of it, and this is what really grabbed me actually during our discussion, was because you mentioned the service to self and service to others, you know, paradigm. And this is not, you know, some construct or some feel-good, you know, new agey thing that doesn't mean anything. It really struck me when you said it, and I said, wow, here's somebody who actually understands this. I've had a couple of guests on that have understood that, but I never heard it quite put that way. So, you know,
well, let me talk about Reiki a little bit.
Oh,
right?
Yeah, you know what? Thank you, because that was the next thing that I sort of let fly out of my mind, because I was just sort of focusing on other things you said. But yeah, if you wouldn't mind explaining that, because you know, I'm not entirely familiar, and I would like to learn, and I'd like the listeners to learn too.
All right. Well, first of all, Reiki is a form of energy healing. It was developed by a guy in Japan quite a while ago, Master Aoki or something. I can't remember his name right now. But the point is that there's many different forms of energy healing. Nobody really discovered this. It's been around in cultures a long time. In India, in the Hindu culture, they talk about pranic healing. They call the energy prana. In the Eastern cultures of, you know, the China, what have you, they refer to it as chi. In the Danish or the Nordic cultures, they refer to it as Odin force. Wilhelm Reich called it orgone energy. You know, call it whatever you want. Cosmic energy, bioenergy, whatever. It's the same thing. It's just energy. Now, I've been an energy healer for some time. I learned, you know, to move energy and to heal long before I became a Reiki master. But the thing that's nice about Reiki, if you look into it, is that it's all about increasing your ability to do this. They have certain philosophies. You know, Reiki is a lifestyle. It's a philosophical lifestyle, and they have certain precepts, like 5 main Reiki precepts that you follow in order to develop this lifestyle. And it's also similar to the same type of thing if you're going to do if you're trying to. People say, how do I develop my psychic skill? Well, it's the same thing. There's certain things you have to do. For instance, you have to control your ego. You got to get past the ego. You have to lose all fear. That means fear of death, fear of loss of possessions, fear of loss of people that you love, all of these things. You have to completely get over that. Another thing, and this gets back to that service to others business, is that you have to endeavor to serve others without any expectation of compensation. That's how they describe it. So, and there's other precepts. I mean, and you have to have integrity. You have to live your life with integrity. You can't go about and do dirty dealings and expect that you're going to be righteous. But the thing is that if you follow all these rules and you endeavor to serve others, you'll see that your ability to do these psychic things goes up really quick. And the healing business, we can all do this. You know, it's like picking up a crying baby and the baby settles down. It's that energy that you are giving the child. You know, it's really easy to do. Anybody can do that. And the other thing about healing that's cool is that I mentioned briefly scalar. And scalar, of course, is that fourth density energy, but that is what we use when we do healing. And the thing about scalar is that it travels faster than the speed of light. Okay, it's anywhere and everywhere at the same time. And so when we do energy healing, for instance, you can do healing from a distance, and that's remote healing. They call it remote healing, kind of like remote viewing. But, like, for instance, if you were to tell me, gosh, I'm going to have a real hard back pain or something right now, I could sit here and I could do my little prayer for you, and you'd notice it right away, and it would be instantaneous, and it doesn't matter where you are in the world, it's going to be there right now, and that's the nature of scalar.
Wow. You know, it's funny you actually say that because I did injure my back yesterday.
Yeah, how did I know that?
That's funny. Wow.
So you got a bad back. You got a little pain, huh?
Yeah.
Well, if you want me to do something for you after the show, I'll do something for you after the show.
It would be much appreciated. Anything to.
It helps if I know what you look like, though. So.
Okay. Well.
You have to send me a photo.
I'll send you one of those scary pictures as soon as I get off the air here. I gotta find one. Because I definitely have a face for radio, Stephen. but yeah, it's and this is true stuff. I mean, look, people say
they use Reiki in hospitals now. Seriously. Here in Los Angeles, at Cedars-Sinai, one of the most prestigious hospitals in the LA area, they actually have Reiki masters in the operating room now because they've discovered that people heal quicker, their medicines work better, everything works better if there's Reiki involved.
Well, yeah, and you know, it is exactly okay. Again, I try and break it down to the most observable way to understand this. You know, the concept of those that had, you know, say, loving parents. You know, I've heard it said, and I'm not one of those people, but I've heard it said by them that, you know, that, like, well, my mother could rub my head if I had a headache, and it would simply go away. You know, no medicine required, nothing else. It was the positive energy, the positive intent from someone who actually loved you. You know what I mean? This is it's a different focus. But what I'm saying is that this is an observable way to understand how intent can translate into physical experience. Right? I mean, I know
you're using a very important word here, intention. Yes, it's all about intention. And in the medical scientific community, they call it healing with intention. So yeah, intentions are everything. When you speak, your words are intentions. There's two things in the universe. Okay, Dr. Emoto, if you're familiar with Dr. Emoto and his work with water and what have you, everybody needs to read up on Dr. Emoto. But he basically said that reality is the result of movement and intention. And all life, all reality comes from movement and intention. When you speak, you are sending out sound waves. Those sound waves are moving, and they are carrying a shape. The sine wave of your sound wave has a specific shape, and that shape contains information, and that information is your intention. So when I say abracadabra, hocus pocus, and I'm twirling my wand around in the air, there's your movement and there's your intention, and that is what makes it all happen. If you take a petri dish and you fill it up with biological material and amino acids and you leave it sitting there, nothing's going to happen. But if you take it and you swirl it around a little bit, suddenly things will start to combine and you will create life. And that's how these things work.
Yeah, and I mean, this is something that I think was understood better in ancient cultures than even today. You know, a lot of knowledge has been lost over time, regardless of how we've attempted to record history, in my opinion. I'm sure that you would agree with that as well. That a lot of this knowledge is it's not new. Let's just say, right?
Oh no, this has been around for a lot longer than recorded history, for sure.
Right. And I do find it fascinating, though. I mean, I was not aware that they were actually trying to use this in hospitals, though. When did you find out about that?
When I was taking my Reiki course a little while back.
No kidding.
Yeah, they're actually using it in hospitals now. I mean, they've done scientific studies with this where they've actually shown that patients heal faster and when they're prescribed medication, that the medication works better when they are using intention. And, you know, and obviously that's, I mean, certainly we all do it, right? We pray for each other. We hope for the best and things like that. Those are positive intentions. By the same token, you have to be aware of people around you that are sending you negative intentions. And you know, it's like, oh, you're going to fail. You're never going to make it. You can't do that. You got to get away from those people because they're going to poison your efforts.
Well, right. And although I don't, and I do hate to drag it back into the religious, forum here, but this is why, some people say that it sort of doesn't make very much sense that I don't necessarily subscribe to Christianity, but I don't discount the power of prayer, because all of that positive intent, when it's being sent for a legitimate cause, you know what I mean? When people are trying to positively reinforce another person, it does literally change the situation. I mean, it doesn't necessarily save everybody's life that you want to save or anything like that, but there have been marked improvements in a lot of people's conditions, a lot of situations based on massive prayer. And therefore, I can't discount that because I believe that the collective intent of a mass can cause things to improve. So it's not incongruous, is it?
No, it's not too far fetched. I'm going to pray for my sports team to win.
Well, now that's just but. But they want to pray that the next iPhone will show up in their mailbox magically and all that. Okay, but obviously that's just kind of silliness and of course selfish. But when people are collectively hoping and wishing and in fact intentionally focusing their energy on the improvement of someone else's condition, the greater standard of living to be granted to a group of people, things like this, I think that it is a legitimate way of affecting change. Obviously, it varies depending on the true intent of people. I mean, many people say they're going to pray and they don't. Many people say that they're going to keep you in their mind and they don't. Many people say they're going to do things and they don't. But if there's a legitimate effort put forward, if there's a legitimate intent that is introduced into the sphere of consciousness, I like that term, sorry, then it does actually cause a change one way or another. And I believe negative intentions can kind of do the same thing. But obviously they're little less controllable, let's just say. And I mean, when it comes down to it, a lot of us do believe that there is, this negative intent that we are battling with, outside of the alien presences, which we've covered. There is the human element here, the elites among us, let's just say, or sort of among us. At least they seem to be on this planet with us. What is your viewpoint on that?
You mean about the negative entities that are roaming around, or what?
Yeah, the ones that are actually here, though, not the off-world ones, but the ones that are kind of among us.
Mm-hmm. Well, people talk about aliens. They think that they come here and they're visiting and whatnot. Yeah, sure they are, but they've been here a lot longer than we have. And something else that I should bring up real quick, just to throw out something to screw with people's heads. The Earth is hollow. It's like a big geode. There's a whole world inside of the Earth. Most of the planets out there that we look at, we see no sign of life. It's because the life is all underground. Planets like Mars and what have you, these are hollow planets. They all are. The Earth is hollow. The Moon is hollow. That's typical. It's like a big geode that you crack open and it's got all the crystals inside. That's what the Earth is like. Obviously, the big gas giants like Jupiter and Saturn are not like that. They're different. But we have had life forms living inside of the Earth for many, many epochs. And every time an epoch comes to a close, a lot of those entities seem to go in there and rescue certain vestiges of those entities. Obviously, the last epoch involved civilizations like Atlantis and Lemuria, and they have actually been taken inside. They are now living inside. Hitler gained access to the inner Earth, back in this, he found the entrance up in Antarctica, and they've actually established a colony inside the Earth called New Schwabenland. A lot of people think that New Schwabenland is actually a secret colony on somewhere in Antarctica. No, it's not in Antarctica. There actually was a territory called New Schwabenland in Antarctica, but the real New Schwabenland is actually a large landmass that's inside the Earth. So that's some pretty crazy stuff there, but that's like one of the biggest secrets in the world right there. In fact, that's probably the biggest secret in the world right there.
Well, I mean, how do you account for the the idea of the plate tectonics? I mean, are we talking about this is below the the magma that we're all sort of floating on here? Or?
Yeah, there is magma, but you have to understand that the Earth is essentially 800 miles thick. So you got to go down 800 miles to get to the other side, to get to the inside. That leaves quite a lot of room for magma and what have you, but and plate tectonics and everything else. And people that have been studying gravity, Earth gravity, and what have you, they have proven this. But again, this is the last thing that the powers that be on Earth want us to know about. And the United States has done research into this. We've done plenty of research into this. The Nautilus, the first atomic submarine, was basically sent under the ice cap for this very reason. Very recently, we had another exploration where we sent a submarine under the ice cap, and they made a big deal out of it, but after it took off, nobody even spoke about it afterwards. But this has to do with this searching for this entrance. But it's there.
Well, I gotta admit again that this is one of those subjects that I really have never studied much. And
well, you got to look at my video. I've got a video on Hollow Earth on Google or YouTube, so you might want to check that out.
Oh, well, how can we find that?
Well, you just Google my name, Stephen D. Kelly, and go to YouTube and search my name, and all my videos will pop up. And you go down through the list, and you find the one that says Hollow Earth.
Oh, okay.
So I did a whole show on that. Yeah.
No kidding. All right, and you know what? Speaking of your show, I know I mentioned your show on Tuesday, but I'd like to mention it again. If you could tell people where they can find it and what the name of it is, because we're running low on time here.
Right. I see that. Okay, yeah, I am on Revolution Radio, which to get to Revolution Radio, of course, it's www.freedomslips.com. I'm on Studio A. My show, my prime show, my main primetime show is every Thursday night at 10 p.m. Eastern. And it's a pretty popular show. Probably, I don't want to toot my horn, but yeah, it's since I got involved in this stuff, I get a lot of listeners, and we do a lot of really, really wild stuff. Well, I mean wild. I mean I've lately I haven't been really focusing on the esoteric and the crazy stuff too much, but I've been really working on trying to stop the war in Syria, stop the war in the Ukraine, that kind of thing. So, yeah, I'm very, very much political.
Well, right, and I mean, just as someone who has a balanced view of the world, I mean, I'm sure that that bloodshed of any kind, for whatever reason, does not rest well with you anyway, right?
Well, for we wrestle not against flesh and blood, right? Out of the Bible. So yeah, we are not here to fight with each other. We're not here to fight against fellow humans. The humans we are those humans. We're not here to kill each other. We are here to fight against the evil. And when I say fight against the evil, I don't mean pick up a gun. I mean, you do not fight Satan with a damn M16. Okay, these people that think you're going to get an assault weapon and go attack Satan, it doesn't work that way. You've got to enhance your psychic skills. You have to increase your spiritual energy. So what we're doing right here with information and sharing information and teaching people how to increase their psychic skills, that is how we are going to get ahead. And it's not through fighting and through hating each other and violence. It's going to be through realizing that we're all the same person and loving each other and unconditional love, and we all have to wake up and we all have to pull each other up. And it's like we don't get to graduate until the ones at the bottom of the class are brought up to the same level as us. So that's why we have to do everything we can to educate our fellow people and let them know what's going on. So, and especially talk to them about this concept of service to self and service to others, because that's really what it's all about. That's the bottom line.
Absolutely, and you know what? I want to thank you again for coming on and spending this 2 hours with me. It did kind of go by pretty quickly. I mean, we covered a lot of ground here tonight, and I want to thank everybody for listening. Whether you caught it on the UCY page or you're on your TuneIn app or your Apple iTunes or whatever it is you're listening to us on or catching it later on down the stream, I really do appreciate everybody who is taking the time to open their minds and spend a little time with us tonight. And I can't thank you enough, Stephen. And once again, your book is available on Amazon Kindle, and it's Cities Under the Plane, right?
That's right. Cities Under the Plane, Amazon Kindle.
Yep, and that's Stephen D. Kelly, and of course it's spelled his last name, by the way, because Stephen, we all know how to spell. The D is obvious, and Kelley. Okay, and I'm going to check him out on YouTube probably a few minutes after I'm done with the show right now, because I want to learn about this Hollow Earth thing. I've heard it mentioned many times, but to be honest with you, it's just one of those things that I've kind of passed by. But I want to see what it's about, and I'm trying to open my mind and trying to open the minds of others. Because look, if you don't begin to examine what is around you, if you don't begin to exchange information, and you don't begin to change yourself, it does not matter the weapon you put in your hand, like Stephen was saying. If you are not prepared from within, it really will be irrelevant as to what weapons the war is fought with. So that is the quality of the soldiers' sort of pat on the back that I would give to anybody who survived this 2 hours with us, because you've got to remember that this is the important thing. You've got to prepare yourself from within. Otherwise, it doesn't matter the amount of supplies you have. Okay? And, thanks so much. I really do appreciate your time. And, of course, I did meet Stephen via the Liberty Beacon, and would like to mention them toward the end here.
Yeah, I'll actually have a show on Liberty Beacon very soon. An extra show in conjunction with the one on Revolution Radio.
Right, which is something that I'm planning on doing as well. Just so you know, a little different from your show, I'm sure, but I think that all of us working together as a chorus might be able to really start to shake the rest of the masses awake. And I think it's a good thing, despite the fact that some of them may yawn and struggle and stretch as we do it, because the more aware you are, the better informed you are. The better you are to defend yourself, the better you are to make your decision, and you can truly choose whether to serve self or serve others. And I implore everybody to try to do what you can to fall a hell of a lot more on that serve others side, because you know what? The reality is that even if Stephen is wrong and even if I'm wrong in promoting that idea, we've done no harm, have we? And
I heard that's right. Yeah.
you know, so even if you don't believe it to start with, and you have to experience it for yourself, there is an elevation, there is a raising of one's consciousness, there is a raising of one's insides one way or another, no matter how you describe them, no matter what dogma you subscribe to. There is a increase in one's energy. There is a reward in and of itself for being in service to others. And I think that is a seriously powerful message, and I'm so glad.
Wow.
Webcam microphone up close. Webcam microphone up close.
At the age of 19 in 1962, she was a...
But I have the files. You know, I read the stuff at the National Archives, and I read these other things. I said to myself, how can that be possible? You know, the final slab of choice, I don't know when that was, doesn't really matter. Internet, professional wrestlers, and not Jesse Ventura style. It doesn't matter where the information comes from as long as it's real. It doesn't, it's hard to get real information. Because seriously, they don't want you to